Okay, so I know that there is a bit of controversy that comes around when YouTubers release fragrances. And I don't know how many of you drop in on Reddit or Fragrantica, but Lord, these fragrances just got beat to death before they were even released. So I felt it was my duty to at least give you like real thoughts and real opinions after the fragrances have actually been smelled. Let's get into this. So before I start, I would just like to say that I have samples of these 3 fragrances from the Zed Creators project. They were TLTG, Curly Scents, and Stay Fresh Productions. A friend of mine actually bought Business Over Pleasure, and when you buy any of those 3, you do get the other 2 fragrances in sample, which is how I accumulated these fragrances. So yeah, they were given to me, but they were given to me in sample. So the bottles were not sent to me. I don't have an axe to grind on this project. I'm just giving you my fair and real thoughts, and remember, it's just one man's opinion. So as some of you know, I was part of this project at one time and I chose to leave it. So with that said, I don't have an axe to grind and I'm going to keep it a buck with you. Okay, so for starters, we are going to go over Business Over Pleasure. Now I have worn this fragrance a couple of times, or attempted to wear it, and the reason I say attempted to wear it because this fragrance is very, very light. Now I did know early on, because I checked with each of the creators as to what type of scent profiles they were going with, and I knew that this one was going to be a spice and wood fragrance. So when I heard that it had iris in it and actually doubled down iris, I was like, okay, I'm very curious about this fragrance and see how it turned out. Now the iris is present in the first few seconds of the fragrance and it's mixed with a little bit of spice. And no matter how many times you spray this fragrance, and I did, I sprayed it like 5 or 6 times on this hand right here. It's actually on here now, and before I've even got to filming good, it's already leaving very quickly. So if you're wanting a light, inoffensive, easy to wear fragrance, this just might be something for you. Now, whether the price range lines up with a very light, and I do mean very light fragrance, this might be something that you may be interested in. There are other options out there. I immediately went to Prada L'Homme Water Splash because that's a very light iris fragrance. It's going to be in a very similar wheelhouse. And I did spray Water Splash on this, and I did spray this at the same time, and Water Splash is actually still here and Business Over Pleasure is gone. So that's not a knock to the fragrance. It may have been intended to be a very inoffensive and light fragrance, and I've heard other people say that they got good performance. I do not, and if I did, I would be more than happy to say so. So for me, it's going to be a hard pass. I can't see the price and the very, very, very weak performance, but if you enjoy the fragrance, fantastic. It's not a bad smelling fragrance. It just leaves a lot left to be desired, in my opinion. And that fragrance did take a beating in Fragrantica before it was even released. Whether you like the guy or not, I don't really feel that that is a fair thing to do to someone. Give the fragrance a chance, you know, then if the fragrance doesn't come up to par, then do what you got to do. But, you know, to beat it to death before it even comes out, if anybody says anything negative after that, it's just like, well, they were talking crap before it even came out. So that's kind of a stupid thing to do. Okay, next up is Brass Insole from Justin Copeland over at Stay Fresh Productions. Now, when it comes to Brass Insole, I wasn't quite sure what the finished product was going to be. When I reached out to Justin and asked him what type of scent profile, he did tell me he was going to go for something fresh, soapy, you know, mass appealing, something that people could wear easily and gravitate towards. So being that was his initial plan, he definitely executed that. Now, when you look at the box for this, it does have like a faux leather top on it. So I wasn't sure if this was going to go a little bit darker than maybe I thought it was in the beginning. And then when you think of Justin, who's, you know, the tall, dark, handsome guy, I didn't know if it was going to be, you know, something dark and mysterious. It's not, but it is very fresh. It is very invigorating, and it's not a bad fragrance at all. Now, one thing that you get right off the cuff out the top is almost like an orange zest. It has mandarin orange listed as one of the notes, and juniper. You really get a strong pop of juniper with that mandarin orange. So you've got that zesty orange and juniper in the opening, which is, you know, a nice opening that really awakens the senses. So after that initial pop of that juniper and orange, you're gonna seg into some florals, which does give it that soapy vibe. You've got some jasmine, you also have some lavender, and you're really getting like a really super clean and soapy vibe. So my thought on this, now I know that there is a different description that's kind of talking about how the notes in jazz are just kind of all over the place, you know, kind of off the notes and this, that, and the other. The way that I looked at it was maybe like after playing a show and then getting a nice shower afterwards, you know, just coming out really fresh and clean. I don't think that that was the intention, but with my interpretation of this type of fragrance, I guess that's where I went with it, because when you think brass, soul, tall, dark, and handsome guy, it just didn't do what I thought it was going to do. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad fragrance, because it's not. I would say that it's, you know, somewhere maybe like Perry Ellis 360, Y, EDP, even D&GK, in that wheelhouse. I'm not saying it smells identical to any of those fragrances, but it's going to jog your memory to a fragrance like that. So if you're into blue fragrances, those clean, fresh, soapy fragrances, this is definitely going to be a winner for you. Now, as far as the projection and longevity on this, it does have moderate sillage. The longevity wasn't super long. It's about 5 hours on my skin, which isn't horrible for a blue fragrance, but I did see some people talking about 10 and 12 hours. I feel that that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but then I'm not carrying their skin. But I do personally have very oily skin, and if a fragrance is going to perform, it usually is going to perform on mine. But other than the fact that it doesn't have outstanding performance, but actually compared to Business Over Pleasure, it has great performance. So if you're wanting that super light, sit very close to the skin type fragrance, Business Over Pleasure is going to be what you want. Where Brass and Soul is actually going to give you a little bit more oomph. Now, I'm not saying like a lot more oomph, but compared, you know, from one to the other, there is a bit difference in the longevity and performance. Then as this dries down, you're going to get a slight combo of amber and just a tiny little hint of suede, a little bit of vanilla, just a very pleasant and easy to wear fragrance. Perfect for summertime, signature scent. You know, it's not going to be offensive. It's not going to be complicated. Just a very easy to wear fragrance. Okay, so the order that I did these is the order that I like the most. So least favorite being the first, next favorite being second, and then last being my favorite, which is the Siren from Curly Scents. And the reason that I like this the most is because it is the most unique. It's the most different. It does go in a completely different direction than the other fragrances. And when I spoke to Andrea when she was working on this fragrance early on, you know, at the same time I was, she told me that she was going for a gourmand fragrance. So I really didn't know what type of gourmand it was going to be, but I have to say that the finished product is a very nice fragrance. So as far as the notes in this fragrance, it kind of goes all over the place. You have notes like vetiver and ginger in a gourmand, but you also have notes like cardamom, almond, coffee, leather, chocolate. So you do get those gourmand aspects, but it's not like an overly cloyingly sweet. They're just there to give it that nod to a gourmand fragrance. So no, it's not overly sweet. It's not cloyingly sweet. As a matter of fact, you get a little bit of bitter almond, and I would say that the chocolate note could maybe pass for slightly bitter cacao and then a little hint of sweet chocolatiness. You also have notes like cognac and patchouli, which are noticeable in this, and you do get a little bit of booziness mixed with that patchouli. And actually the chocolate and patchouli almost gives off like that chocolatey patchouli. So if you've smelled patchouli that has that slightly chocolate vibe to it, that's the type of patchouli in here. It's not like overly dirty or gritty or anything like that. Then you're going to get a nice hint of coffee and then vetiver. Now I know I mentioned that vetiver early on with the ginger. Now I really feel that the ginger does work. It gives it a nice pop in the opening, and then the vetiver is a little bit like more of a woodsy type vetiver on that dry down. So out of these three, it's definitely my favorite. It's the most unique. This one's going to be more towards fall and winter. It's, you know, it's a darker fragrance, but it's not like super dark, not super pungent. Now this fragrance does sit a little bit close to the skin. It's not a projection monster or anything like that, but I feel like if you maybe sprayed it a little bit heavy, it would be a nice thick fragrance to wear in the fall and winter. Now I do have that one sprayed right here, and I'm going back and smelling it, and I'm picking up a little bit of that chocolate and leather and a little bit of that cognac. So you guys know that I love my boozy and gourmand fragrances. So yeah, I am going to personally gravitate towards a fragrance like this, and if I were to purchase one, this would be the one that I purchased. And that's no knock to the other ones. I just feel that the other ones just were a little more safe than this one, and this one isn't going like way outside of the box. So don't think that it's going to be like super super complicated or hard to wear or anything like that. Where if you are wanting something safe and you're gambling, you haven't had a chance to smell it, you might want to go with maybe like Brass Insole. I feel that one would be, like if you wanted a dumb reach fragrance, that would be the one that I would go for. But if you want something that's a little bit different, a little bit more personality, I would say the Siren would be the pick. So in closing, I would just like to say congratulations to all 3 channels. Well done. Whatever it was that you were trying to accomplish, I hope that you got it accomplished. I hope you're proud of your work. And there were some good fragrances that were put out in this. Now, whether you think that it's worth the price point or not, that is yet to be seen. I don't see spending $500 and $600 on fragrances, but I have friends that do it all the time. I'm not going to do that. But I think it's like $127 with shipping and everything on that, which isn't crazy expensive. But then at the same time, where some of this does feel a little resemblance to fragrances you may already have in your collection that are less, that's up to the eye of the beholder. So let me know down in the comments, have you tried any of the Zed Creator fragrances? If so, which is your favorite and why? If you haven't tried one, which one is it that you want to try the most next? Until next time, I'll catch you guys on CFR.